The red warning lights flashed across the bridge of the warship Defender's Pride. Admiral Zextar watched the main screen with growing horror as another one of his ships exploded in a ball of fire and metal. The enemy vessels moved like hungry insects, their black hulls gleaming with a wet organic shine that made his forearms shake with disgust. "Sir, the starlight is gone," reported his communications officer, her voice trembling. "That makes 15 ships lost in the last hour." Zextar's reptilian eyes narrowed as he studied the enemy formation. The Keth Mori ships looked nothing like proper warships. They were alive, breathing things that grew and changed as they fought. He had seen them literally eat the metal from destroyed vessels and transform it into new weapons within minutes. "All ships, fall back to defensive position 7, he ordered, his voice carrying across the fleet communications. "Prepare to cover the evacuation transports." Below them, the planet Zerion Prime burned. 3 billion people lived on that world just yesterday. Now, massive bioships hung in the atmosphere like giant parasites, their feeding tubes reaching down to suck up entire cities. The screams coming through the emergency channels had stopped an hour ago. Lieutenant Kexila, a young officer with bright blue scales, turned from her station. "Admiral, the evacuation ships are reporting they can only take 2 million people. The rest will die," Zextar finished grimly. He had been fighting wars for 40 years, but nothing had prepared him for this. The Keth Mori Dominion did not conquer worlds. They consumed them completely, turning every bit of matter into more ships, more weapons, more death. Queen Admiral Hasathak's voice suddenly filled the bridge, broadcast on all frequencies. The alien's words came through the translators in a harsh, clicking tone that made everyone's skin crawl. "People of this dying world," she said, her voice full of cruel satisfaction, "you fight like children with broken toys. Your ships feed our growth. Your cities become our strength. Soon we will feast on your core worlds, and the galaxy will know the true power of the Dominion." On the screen, Zextar could see the Queen Admiral's flagship. It was massive, easily 10 times the size of his own vessel, with countless smaller ships attached to its sides like hungry babies feeding from their mother. The ship pulsed with a sickly green light, and he could swear he saw it growing larger even as he watched. "Sir," called the tactical officer, "enemy reinforcements jumping in. 70 new contacts. They're moving to surround us." Zextar's hearts sank. The Galactic Confederation had been fighting the Keth Mori for 3 years now, and they had never won a single major battle. Every engagement ended the same way. The bioships would arrive, consume everything in sight, and move on to the next target. The aliens reproduced faster than anyone could kill them. "Begin evacuation of non-essential personnel," he ordered. "Signal the fleet to prepare for fighting retreat." As his crew worked frantically at their stations, Zextar thought about the reports that had been coming in from across the galaxy. The scholarly Velthari had lost their great libraries on Luminos 3. The trading guilds of the Norax Collective saw their merchant fleets devoured completely. Dozens of smaller species had already gone extinct, their entire civilizations turned into biomatter for the Dominion's growth. Dr. Yelena, the Velthari scientist who had been studying the enemy ships, approached his command chair. Her large purple eyes showed the exhaustion they all felt. "Admiral," she said quietly, "I've been analyzing their attack patterns. The bioships are not just weapons. They're part of a single organism. Every ship is connected to Queen Admiral Hasathak through some kind of neural network. Can we use that against them?" Zextar asked hopefully. She shook her head. "The connection is too strong, too complex. We would need technology far beyond anything the Confederation has ever developed." Another explosion lit up the view screen as one of the evacuation transports took a direct hit. Thousands of innocent lives were gone in an instant. Zextar felt his claws dig into the arms of his chair. "Sir, the Keth Mori are breaking through our defensive line," reported the tactical officer. "They're heading straight for the remaining evacuation ships." Zextar stood up, his tall frame casting a shadow across the bridge. "All ships intercept course, we make our stand here." "But sir," Lieutenant Kexila protested, "we cannot win against those numbers." "No," he agreed, but we can buy time for those transports to escape." The Defender's pride turned toward the enemy, along with the remaining 20 ships of his fleet. It was hopeless, but it was the right thing to do. Better to die fighting than to run and let innocent people be consumed. The Kethmori bioships moved like a living wave of death. Their weapons were not energy beams or missiles, but streams of acid that melted through armor, and clouds of tiny organisms that ate through hull plating from the inside. When they destroyed a ship, they would immediately begin breaking it down for raw materials. "First wave incoming," called the weapons officer, firing all batteries. The Confederation ships opened fire with everything they had. Blue energy beams and kinetic projectiles struck the bioships, but the damage seemed to heal almost instantly. The alien vessels absorbed the attacks and kept coming. "They're adapting to our weapons," Dr. Yelena said with horror. "The bioships are actually learning how to resist our attacks in real time." One by one, Zextar's ships began to fall. The Morning Star was covered in acid and dissolved completely. The Bright Hope was swarmed by smaller bioships that ate through its hull like termites through wood. The Peaceful Dawn tried to ram one of the larger enemies, but the bioship simply opened like a flower and swallowed the attacking vessel whole. "Sir, we're down to 8 ships," reported the tactical officer. "The evacuation transports are almost clear, but we won't last much longer." Zextar nodded grimly. At least they had saved some lives. It was not much, but it was something. Queen Admiral Histhak's voice filled the bridge again. "You fight well for food," she said with cruel amusement. "Your courage will make excellent protein for our young." The Admiral looked around at his bridge crew. They were all young, bright officers who deserved to see the stars in peace, not die in a hopeless battle against monsters. But they stayed at their posts, doing their duty even as death approached. "It has been an honor serving with all of you," he told them. The Kethmori bioships closed in for the final attack. Their weapons charged with deadly energy, ready to end the last resistance in the Xerion system. The galaxy grew a little darker as hope seemed to die. But sometimes when things look darkest, the universe has surprises waiting. Sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places, and sometimes a single ship can change the fate of an entire galaxy. Deep in space, far from the battle, sensors began to detect something new approaching. Something that had never been seen before in all the long history of galactic civilization. Something that would change everything. 6 months had passed since the fall of Xerion Prime. The Kethmori Dominion had grown like a cancer across the galaxy, consuming everything in their path. What was once a thriving civilization of hundreds of worlds was now mostly empty space, dotted with the massive biofactories that the aliens used to build their endless fleets. Dr. Yelena sat in the small laboratory aboard the refugee ship Sanctuary's Hope, staring at her computer screens with tired purple eyes. Around her, the ship hummed with the quiet desperation of people who had lost everything. 20,000 survivors from a dozen different worlds lived in the cramped corridors, sharing stories of homes that no longer existed. "Doctor, you need to see this," called her assistant, a young Norax engineer named Pipex. His orange fur was matted from months of poor nutrition, but his voice carried excitement. Yelena looked up from her research on Kethmori bioship structures. "What is it?" "I'm picking up something strange on the long-range sensors. An energy signature unlike anything in our databases." She moved to his station and studied the readings. The energy pattern was organized and artificial, definitely from some kind of advanced technology. But it was completely different from both Confederation science and Kethmori biosystems. "Where is it coming from?" she asked. "The Galactic Rim, Sector 779. That area was marked as empty space in all our star charts." Yelena frowned. The Galactic Rim was supposed to be nothing but dead systems and scattered asteroids. No one had ever found signs of intelligent life out there. "How far away?" she asked. "About 40 light years, but Dr." Pipex's voice grew worried. "It's moving, and it's moving fast, much faster than any ship we know about." She studied the data more carefully. Whatever was producing this signal was traveling at speeds that should have been impossible. Even the most advanced Confederation ships could only manage a few light years per day in hyperspace. This thing was covering the same distance in hours. "Get me, Captain." "Mordux," she said urgently. Captain Mordux was a grizzled veteran who had been fighting the Kethmori since the beginning of the war. His ship, the Sanctuary's Hope, was one of the last independent vessels in the galaxy. Most of the surviving Confederation forces were hiding in the nebula of lost voices under Admiral Zextar's command. "What's got you excited, Doctor?" Mordux asked as he entered the lab. His scarred face showed the weariness they all felt. "We've detected an unknown energy source moving toward our sector. The technology behind it is completely beyond anything we understand." Mordux studied the sensor readings, his experienced eyes taking in the implications quickly. Could be another alien species. Maybe they're running from the Kethmori too. Or maybe there's something worse, suggested Pipex nervously. "No," Yelena said thoughtfully. "Look at the energy pattern. It's controlled, precise. This is advanced technology, not biological like the Kethmori ships. Someone built this thing with careful engineering." Far away, in the heart of Kethmori-controlled space, Queen Admiral Hesthak felt a small tremor of unease through her neural connection to the Dominion fleet. Her massive form, part alien and part living ship, floated in the biofluid that kept her connected to every vessel under her command. Through 1,000 different sensors on 1,000 different ships, she could feel the galaxy bending to her will. 73% of all known worlds had been consumed. The few survivors hid in dark corners of space like frightened insects. But something was wrong. Her scouts at the edge of controlled space were reporting strange readings. Something was approaching that did not match any known ship design. "Investigate," she commanded, her thoughts flowing instantly to 3 of her fastest bioships. "Find this anomaly and consume it." The bioships changed course immediately, their living hulls adjusting for maximum speed. They moved through space like predators following a scent, their sensors reaching out hungrily for their new target. Back on the Sanctuary's Hope, Dr. Yelena continued to monitor the approaching signal. It was now only 20 light-years away and still accelerating. Whatever kind of engines this ship used, they were far beyond current galactic technology. "Doctor," Pipex called out with alarm, "I'm detecting Kethmori ships moving to intercept the unknown contact. 3 bioships moving at maximum speed." Yelena felt her heart sink. Whoever these newcomers were, they were about to face the same fate as everyone else who had encountered the Dominion. The bioships would swarm them, dissolve their vessel, and turn the raw materials into more weapons. "How long until they meet?" she asked. "Approximately 6 hours," Pipex replied. Captain Mordux shook his head sadly. "We should try to warn them, but our communications don't have that kind of range." "Wait," Yelena said suddenly. "I'm reading massive energy spikes from the unknown ship. It's changing course." On her screen, the energy signature suddenly shifted direction and accelerated even more. Whatever this ship was, it was moving directly toward the Kethmori bioships instead of away from them. "Are they insane?" Mordux asked. "No one attacks the Kethmori directly. That's suicide." "Maybe they don't know what they're facing," Pipex suggested. But Yelena was studying the energy patterns more carefully. There was something about the way this ship moved that suggested confidence rather than ignorance. It was approaching the bioships like a predator that had found prey, not like a victim about to be consumed. "Captain," she said slowly, "I think we should move closer. I want to see what happens when they meet." Mordux looked at her like she was crazy. "Doctor, if we get too close to a Kethmori engagement, we'll be detected and destroyed. Not if we stay at the edge of sensor range." "Please, Captain. This could be important." After a moment, Mordux nodded. "All right, Doctor. But if this goes wrong, we'll all be bioship food within the hour." The Sanctuary's Hope changed course, moving carefully toward the meeting point between the unknown ship and the Kethmori biovessels. All across the ship, refugees gathered around view screens and sensor stations, hoping for any piece of good news in their long months of despair. As they approached, Yelena's instruments began picking up more details about the unknown vessel. It was large, possibly as big as a Kethmori heavy cruiser, but its construction was completely different. Where bioships were curved and organic, this ship had straight lines and sharp angles. It looked like it was built from refined metal rather than grown from living tissue. "The hull appears to be some kind of advanced alloy," she reported. "And the energy readings. By the ancient stars, the power output from this ship is incredible. It's generating more energy than our entire fleet could produce. Maybe they have a chance after all," Mordux said hopefully. But even as he spoke, the 3 Kethmori bioships appeared on their sensors, moving in their typical attack formation. Each one was easily 3 times the size of any Confederation warship, their hulls bristling with acid projectors and swarm launchers. The bioships are hailing the unknown vessel, Pipex reported. Standard Kethmori surrender demand. They all knew what that meant. Queen Admiral Husthak was giving the newcomers one chance to submit to consumption before the attack began. Any response from the unknown ship? Yelena asked. Yes, Doctor. They're responding in perfect Kethmori dialect, and Common Galactic, and Velthari, and 12 other languages simultaneously. Yelena's eyes widened. Universal translators that advanced were theoretical technology, far beyond anything currently available. What are they saying? Mordux demanded. Pipex listened to the translation with growing amazement. They're asking the Kethmori to surrender and withdraw from the area. They're offering safe passage to any bioships that stand down immediately. The bridge fell silent. No one in galactic history had ever demanded a Kethmori surrender. It was unthinkable. Queen Admiral Husthak's response came through the bioship's communications array, her voice full of cruel amusement. Unknown vessel, you will be consumed like all the others. Your courage will make good protein. The 3 bioships began their attack run, weapons charging with deadly energy, but as they closed in, something impossible happened. The unknown ship opened fire and the bioship started dying. The first Kethmori bioship exploded in a brilliant flash of light that could be seen across the entire star system. Dr. Yelena stared at her instruments in complete shock, unable to believe what her sensors were telling her. That's impossible, she whispered. No one destroys a Kethmori bioship in a single shot. But even as she spoke, the unknown vessel fired again. A beam of pure energy, brighter than anything she had ever seen, cut through the second bioship like a knife through paper. The living vessel didn't even have time to regenerate before it was completely destroyed. Captain Mordux was gripping his command chair so hard his knuckles had turned white. What kind of weapons are those? He asked in amazement. The third bioship tried to retreat, but it was too late. The unknown vessel moved with incredible speed, appearing behind the fleeing alien ship in seconds. This time, instead of destroying it completely, the mysterious attackers seemed to disable it with some kind of stunning beam. The bioship went dark and began drifting in space. They captured it, Pipex said with wonder. They actually captured a living Kethmori vessel. On the bridge of the UES Retribution, Captain Sarah Chen watched her tactical display with satisfaction. The 3 alien ships had been dealt with quickly and efficiently, just as her crew had trained for during the long journey from Earth. Tactical analysis complete. Captain, reported Lieutenant Commander James Walsh, her weapons officer. These biological ships are more fragile than our initial estimates suggested. Their hulls can't withstand directed plasma fire. What about the one we captured? Chen asked. Secured in Cargo Bay 7, ma'am. Science teams are already beginning their analysis. Chen nodded and turned to her communications officer. Any response from the ship that was observing the battle? Yes, Captain. They're hailing us on multiple frequencies. They seem very excited. Put them through. The main screen flickered and suddenly Chen was looking at the bridge of an alien vessel. The crew appeared to be a mix of different species. Reptilian beings with 4 arms, purple-skinned humanoids with large eyes, and several others she didn't recognize. Unknown vessel, came a voice through the universal translator. This is Captain Mordux of the refugee ship Sanctuary's Hope. We witnessed your battle with the Kethmori. How is this possible? Chen studied the aliens carefully. They looked exhausted, frightened, and desperate. The ship behind them appeared to be overcrowded with refugees. These people had clearly been through terrible experiences. Captain Mordux, she replied. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Systems Navy vessel Retribution. We're here to help. Earth? Asked one of the aliens. A purple-skinned female who appeared to be some kind of scientist. We have no records of any species called humans or any planet called Earth. That's not surprising, Chen replied. We've been developing independently for quite some time. May I ask what the situation is here? Our sensors detected widespread destruction across this sector. Captain Mordux's expression grew grim. The Kethmori Dominion has been consuming the galaxy for 3 years. They've destroyed most of our civilization. The ships you just destroyed were part of their scouting force. Chen felt a cold anger settle in her stomach. How many worlds have been lost? 73% of all inhabited systems, the purple-skinned scientist replied. Billions of people have died. The few survivors are scattered across dead systems, hiding wherever we can. Behind Chen, her bridge crew exchanged glances. They had known this galaxy was in trouble when they detected the distress signals. But the scope of the devastation was worse than they had imagined. Captain Chen, the scientist continued, the Kethamori bioships adapt to any weapon used against them. How were you able to destroy them so easily? Chen smiled grimly. Our weapons work on principles they've never encountered before. But more importantly, we've been preparing for something like this for a very long time. That was an understatement. Humanity had spent centuries developing their technology and military doctrine based on one simple principle: be ready for anything. While other species in the galaxy had focused on trade, diplomacy, or internal conflicts, humans had always been preparing for the possibility of an external threat. Captain Mordux, Chen continued, we'd like to establish formal contact with your government or military command. We have a lot to discuss. Our government was destroyed when the core worlds fell, Mordux replied sadly. The only organized resistance left is under Admiral Zextar's command, hidden in the nebula of lost voices. Can you take us to them? Dr. Yelena spoke up from her position beside Mordux. Captain Chen, with respect, Admiral Zextar has fewer than 200 ships left. Even with your advanced weapons, that's not enough to fight the entire Kethamori Dominion. They have thousands of bioships. Chen's expression didn't change. Doctor, how many ships do you think humanity has? Based on the energy output of your vessel, I would estimate that your people could field perhaps 20 or 30 ships of this size. For the first time since the conversation began, Chen allowed herself a small smile. Doctor, the Retribution is one of our smaller vessels. And it's not alone. Deep in Kethamori-controlled space, Queen Admiral Hasthak felt the destruction of her 3 scout ships through her neural link to the fleet. The sudden loss of connection was like having 3 of her limbs cut off at once. For the first time in her long life, she experienced something she had never felt before. Uncertainty. Her consciousness reached out through the vast network of bioships under her command, touching the minds of 1,000 ship captains. Through their senses, she could feel the entire galaxy that now belonged to the Dominion. But something had changed. Something new had entered her domain. Unknown ship technology, she hissed to her subordinates, her voice carrying through the biofluid that connected her to the fleet. Analysis required. Send probe ships to investigate. But even as she gave the order, a part of her that had been shaped by millions of years of evolution was sending a different message. This new threat was unlike anything the Dominion had faced before. For the first time since beginning their galactic conquest, Queen Admiral Hasthak felt the unfamiliar sensation of fear. Back aboard the Retribution, Captain Chen was reviewing the intelligence her crew had gathered from their captured bioship. The findings were both fascinating and disturbing. The biological vessels are not just ships, reported Dr. Lisa Park, the ship's xenobiologist. They're actually extensions of a single massive organism. Every ship is connected through some kind of quantum neural network. Can we disrupt this network? Chen asked. Possibly, but we would need to locate the central control node. Based on the neural patterns we've detected, there's a primary consciousness directing the entire fleet. Chen nodded thoughtfully. The queen you mentioned, Captain Mordux. This Queen Admiral Hasthak. That's correct, Mordux replied through the communications link they had maintained. She commands the entire Dominion fleet through her biolink. But Captain, she's protected by thousands of ships. No force in the galaxy has been strong enough to reach her. Captain Mordux, Chen said calmly. I think it's time you met Admiral Zextar. And I think it's time the galaxy learned what humans can do when someone threatens innocent people. She turned to her navigation officer. Set course for the nebula of lost voices. And send a quantum burst transmission to Earth Command. Tell them we've found our fight. As the Retribution and the Sanctuary's Hope entered hyperspace together, neither crew could imagine how much their meeting would change the course of galactic history. In the depths of space, more human ships were already moving, their crews eager to join the battle that would determine the fate of every living being in the galaxy. The Kethamori had devastated the galaxy with their biological weapons and hive mind tactics. But they had never faced an enemy like humanity before. They had never encountered a species that had spent centuries learning how to fight as one, yet think as individuals. They had never met people who would sacrifice everything to protect strangers. They were about to learn why humans were the most dangerous species in the galaxy, not because of their weapons, but because of their willingness to use them in defense of others. The nebula of lost voices was a perfect hiding place. The swirling clouds of gas and cosmic dust made sensors useless beyond a few kilometers, and the high radiation levels would kill most biological organisms within hours. It was the last place anyone would expect to find a military base. Admiral Zextar stood on the bridge of his flagship Last Stand, watching the tactical display as the human ship approached their hidden position. Next to him, Dr. Yelena studied her readings of the mysterious vessel with growing amazement. "Admiral," she said quietly, "the energy output from that single ship is greater than our entire fleet combined." "How is that possible?" "We're about to find out," Zextar replied as the human vessel dropped out of hyperspace just outside the nebula's edge. Captain Chen's voice came through the communication system, clear and confident. "Admiral Zextar, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Retribution. Request permission to enter your base for urgent tactical discussions." "Permission granted, Captain," Zextar replied. "Follow the beacon signal. And Captain, thank you for what you did to those Kethmori ships." As the Retribution moved through the nebula's twisting passages, Zextar felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Maybe, just maybe, these humans could provide the edge they needed to finally fight back. The human ship docked with the main station with impressive precision. Within minutes, Captain Chen and her senior officers were walking through the station's corridors, followed by a group of Confederation leaders who had gathered to meet them. Chen was younger than Zextar had expected, perhaps 40 years old by human standards, with short brown hair and intelligent dark eyes. But there was something about the way she carried herself that spoke of absolute confidence and extensive combat experience. "Admiral," she said as they entered the main briefing room, "my ship's computers have been analyzing the situation across the galaxy. I need to understand exactly what we're facing." Dr. Yelena activated the holographic display, showing the current state of galactic civilization. Red zones marked Kethmori-controlled territory, while tiny green dots showed the locations of surviving refugee populations. "As you can see," she explained, "the Dominion controls almost 3/4 of known space. Their bioships reproduce exponentially, using consumed matter to create new vessels. They have approximately 15,000 major warships and countless smaller craft." Chen studied the display carefully, her expression never changing. "What about their command structure?" "Queen Admiral Husthak controls everything through a neural network," Admiral Zextar explained. "Every ship is connected to her consciousness. They move as one organism, which makes them incredibly coordinated but also predictable." "Predictable is good," Chen said thoughtfully. "What about their defensive capabilities?" "The bioships can adapt to most weapons after a few exposures," Dr. Yelena replied. "They literally evolve their defenses in real time. That's why no one has been able to develop effective countermeasures." Chen nodded and turned to her own science officer, Dr. Park. "Analysis? Based on our examination of the captured bioship, their adaptation is limited to biological processes," Dr. Park replied. "They can't adapt to directed energy weapons that operate at the quantum level. Their neural network is also vulnerable to certain types of electromagnetic interference." Captain Mordux, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. "Captain Chen, even with superior weapons, you're talking about facing 15,000 enemy ships with... How many vessels do you have?" Chen smiled for the first time since arriving. "Currently in this sector, just the Retribution. But that's about to change." She activated her own communication device, and suddenly the briefing room was filled with multiple holographic displays showing star charts and fleet positions. "Admiral Zextar," she continued, "the United Earth Systems has been preparing for galactic-scale warfare for 2 centuries. We've been watching the development of faster-than-light travel and waiting for the right moment to make contact. When we detected the Kethmori attacks, we knew that moment had come." "How many ships?" Zextar asked, hardly daring to hope. "The first wave consists of 50 capital ships, each comparable to the Retribution. They're currently in hyperspace and will arrive within 6 hours." The room fell completely silent. 50 ships with the firepower they had witnessed would be enough to challenge any Kethmori fleet directly. "The second wave," Chen continued, "includes 200 additional vessels and support craft. They'll arrive within 24 hours. Dr. Yelena's purple eyes were wide with disbelief. "Captain, that's more firepower than the entire Galactic Confederation ever possessed at its peak." And that's just the beginning, Chen replied. The full Earth defense fleet includes over 3,000 ships of various classes. But more importantly, we bring something else. Tactical coordination at a level the Kethmori have never encountered. She gestured to her tactical officer, who activated another display showing human military doctrine. While the Kethmori operate as a single organism, humans fight as independent units that can coordinate perfectly through quantum communication networks. Every ship captain can make instant decisions while remaining connected to the overall battle plan. Admiral Zextar studied the tactical displays with growing excitement. This could actually work. If we coordinate your fleet with our remaining forces, that's exactly what I was thinking, Chen agreed. But first, we need to deal with the immediate threat. She activated her ship's long-range sensors, and the display showed a massive Kethmori fleet moving toward their position. Queen Admiral Husthak has detected our presence, Dr. Park reported. She's sending approximately 200 bioships to investigate the destruction of her scouts. 200 ships, Captain Mordux said with despair. Even with your advanced weapons, you can't fight that many at once. Chen's expression remained calm. Actually, Captain, this presents a perfect opportunity. Dr. Yil-Enna, you said the bioships are all connected through their neural network? Yes, but what does that matter? You can't access their network without biocompatible technology. We don't need to access it, Chen replied. We just need to overload it. She turned to her science officer. Dr. Park, are you ready to test the neural feedback weapon? Yes, Captain. The quantum resonance projector is fully charged. Zextar looked confused. What's a neural feedback weapon? Something we developed specifically for hive mind organisms, Chen explained. When we fire it at one ship in a neural network, it sends a massive feedback pulse through the entire connected system. The more ships in the network, the stronger the feedback becomes. You could disrupt their entire command structure, Dr. Yelena realized with growing excitement. Or destroy it completely, Chen confirmed. But we need to get close enough to their fleet to use it effectively. That's suicide, Admiral Zextar protested. 200 bioships will overwhelm any single vessel. Chen smiled again, and this time there was something predatory in her expression. Admiral, you're thinking like someone who's been losing this war. It's time to start thinking like someone who's going to win it. She activated her communication system. All stations, this is Captain Chen. Prepare for combat operations. We're going to show the galaxy what happens when you threaten innocent people in human space. As the Retribution began powering up its weapon systems, every sensor on the station detected the approach of the Kethmori fleet. 200 bioships, each one capable of destroying entire worlds, moved through space like a cloud of death. But for the first time in 3 years, the defenders were not afraid. They had allies now. They had hope, and they had humans. Queen Admiral Husthak felt the approach of her fleet through the neural network, confident that this new threat would be eliminated quickly. Her bioships had never failed to consume their enemies. Whatever technology these newcomers possessed, it would soon be absorbed into the Dominion. She had no way of knowing that she was about to face an enemy that had spent centuries preparing for exactly this kind of fight. An enemy that understood war not as conquest, but as protection. An enemy that would sacrifice everything to defend strangers they had never met. The Kethmori were about to learn why. Humans were the most feared warriors in their part of the galaxy, not because they enjoyed fighting, but because they were really, really good at it. The battle for the Xerion system began at exactly 1430 Galactic Standard Time. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Retribution as 200 Kethmori bioships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their living hulls pulsing with deadly energy. All stations report ready. Captain, announced her executive officer, Commander Martinez, around the human ship. The scattered remnants of Admiral Zextar's fleet took their positions. 147 vessels of various sizes, crewed by desperate survivors who had been running for 3 years. Today they would finally stop running. Captain Chen, came Admiral Zextar's voice over the communications channel. My ships are in position. We're ready to follow your lead. Chen nodded, studying the tactical display. The Kethmori were arranging themselves in their typical swarm formation, preparing to overwhelm the defenders through sheer numbers. It was a tactic that had worked perfectly for 3 years. Today, it would fail. Dr. Park, Chen said to her science officer, Is the neural feedback weapon ready? Quantum resonance projector is fully charged, Captain, but we need to get within 10,000 kilometers of their formation for maximum effect. That's almost point-blank range, Commander Martinez observed. They'll tear us apart before we can fire, Chen smiled grimly. Not if we give them something else to think about first. Communications. Open a channel to all Kethmori vessels. The main screen flickered, and suddenly Queen Admiral Husthak's alien face filled the display. Her insect-like features showed cruel amusement as she looked at the small human fleet. So, she said in her clicking voice, the new prey gathers together to be consumed more efficiently. How thoughtful. Queen Admiral Husthak, Chen replied calmly. This is your only warning. Withdraw your forces from the system immediately or face the consequences. The alien queen's laughter was like the sound of breaking glass. Foolish creature. You destroyed 3 of my scouts and think yourself powerful. You will learn that the Dominion cannot be stopped. Your ships will feed our growth just like all the others. I don't think so, Chen replied. You see, your scouts never had a chance to report what they learned about our capabilities. You have no idea what you're really facing. Queen Admiral Husthak's expression changed slightly. Through her neural link to the Dominion fleet, she had felt the sudden loss of her 3 scout ships. They had simply vanished from the network without any warning or distress signals. It does not matter, she said, but for the first time, there was uncertainty in her voice. My fleet will overwhelm you through sheer numbers. 200 ships against your pitiful few. 200 ships in this system, Chen agreed. But you've forgotten something important, Your Majesty. You've spread your forces across the entire galaxy. What happens when you suddenly need to defend everything at once? Queen Admiral Husthak was about to respond when her neural network exploded with alarm signals. Across the galaxy, her bioships were reporting massive human fleets attacking Kethmori positions simultaneously. At the Velthari home system, 50 human warships had just destroyed 3 Kethmori biofactories. In the Norax collective territory, another human fleet was systematically eliminating isolated bioship groups. At the former Confederation capital world, human marines were landing on the planet's surface, driving back the Kethmori ground forces that had been consuming the population. Impossible, Queen Admiral Husthak whispered. Where did they come from? We've been preparing for this war longer than your species has existed, Chen replied. Every human ship in the galaxy just received the same order. Eliminate the Kethmori threat. You wanted to fight the galaxy's defenders? Congratulations. You found them. The Queen Admiral's rage was terrible to behold. You dare challenge the Dominion? I will personally tear your ship apart and consume your crew alive. You're welcome to try, Chen said calmly. But first let me show you something we learned from studying your captured scout ship. She nodded to Dr. Park, who activated the neural feedback weapon. The quantum resonance projector fired a beam of invisible energy directly at the center of the Kethmori formation. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, one by one, the bioships began to convulse as the feedback pulse traveled through their neural network. The weapon had found the quantum frequency of their hive-mind connection and was amplifying it beyond their ability to control. Queen Admiral Husthak screamed as 200 sets of sensory data crashed into her consciousness simultaneously. The neural network that had been her greatest strength was now tearing her mind apart from the inside. All Confederation ships attack now. Admiral Zextar's voice rang across the communications channel. The combined human and Confederation fleet struck the disoriented Kethmori formation like a hammer blow. The bioships, cut off from their central command, flailed helplessly as their individual ship minds tried to function independently for the first time in their existence. Most of them simply shut down completely, their biosystems unable to cope with independent thought. Others began attacking each other, their confused minds unable to distinguish friend from foe. Within 30 minutes, the entire Kethmori fleet in the Zerion system had been destroyed or captured. But the real battle was happening across the galaxy, as human fleets struck Kethmori positions everywhere at once. The aliens' greatest advantage, their ability to coordinate through the neural network, had become their greatest weakness when that network was disrupted. On her flagship deep in Dominion space, Queen Admiral Husthak felt her empire crumbling around her. Half of her bioships had been destroyed in the initial human attacks. The rest were confused and leaderless, unable to function without her direct control. For the first time in her long life, she felt fear. Real overwhelming terror at the possibility of defeat. All ships, she commanded through the damaged neural network. Retreat to the core systems, defensive formation around the home fleet. But it was too late. Human ships were already in hyperspace, moving to cut off her escape routes. Captain Chen had not been boasting when she said humanity had been preparing for this war. They had studied every possible scenario, planned for every contingency. The humans fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Each ship operated independently, but coordinated perfectly through their quantum communication systems. They adapted their tactics in real time, learning from each engagement and sharing that knowledge instantly across their entire fleet. More importantly, they fought with a fury that came from protecting the innocent. Every human captain knew that billions of people had died in the Kethmori attacks. Every human crew member understood that they were fighting not for conquest, but for justice. The war that had lasted 3 years ended in 3 days. By the time Queen Admiral Husthak finally surrendered, 90% of her bioships had been destroyed or captured. The surviving Kethmori found themselves cut off from the hive mind, forced to think as individuals for the first time in their species' history. Captain Chen stood on the bridge of the Retribution as they approached the Queen Admiral's flagship. The massive bioship was drifting powerless in space, its weapons offline and its crew in complete confusion. "Captain," reported Dr. Park, "we're receiving a surrender transmission from the Kethmori flagship." "Put it through." Queen Admiral Husthak appeared on the screen, but she looked nothing like the confident predator from before. Her insect-like features showed exhaustion and defeat. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. I surrender," she said. "My fleet is defeated. The Dominion is broken. What are your terms?" Chen studied the alien queen for a long moment. "Your terms are simple, Your Majesty. Your people will help rebuild what they destroyed. Every world you consumed will be restored. Every species you drove to extinction will be brought back if possible. And you will learn to think as individuals rather than as a hive mind. And if we refuse, then you'll be imprisoned until you change your minds. But I don't think you'll refuse. You see, something interesting happened when we broke your neural network. Your people started thinking for themselves, and when they started thinking for themselves, they started feeling guilty about what they had done." It was true. Across the galaxy, former Kethmori ship captains were experiencing emotions they had never felt before. Guilt, shame, remorse for the billions of deaths they had caused. The hive mind had protected them from these feelings, but now they had to face the consequences of their actions. 6 months later, Captain Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the new space station orbiting Earth. Through the massive windows, she could see ships from dozens of different species working together to build a better galaxy. The Kethmori had kept their word. Under human supervision, they were using their biotechnology to restore damaged worlds and bring back extinct species. Queen Admiral Husthak herself had become an advocate for individual rights among her people, helping them adjust to life without the hive mind. Admiral Zextar approached, wearing the new uniform of the Galactic Defense Force. "Captain Chen, the Council has approved the establishment of 50 new colonies for displaced populations. The Velthari are already planning to rebuild their great libraries.